I'll just make a quick intro and we'll kick off, Barry.
Go for it. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Learning and Development Officer at Osteopathy Australia. My name is Dominic, and it's with pleasure that I welcome Barry Nguyen tonight. Barry is here tonight partly because, well, his success with AI and technology has taken him to the point where he's at today. He was actually a finalist at last year's Physiotherapy Research Foundation Physio Pitch Fest competition with his AI-powered app, CliniScribe. And I won't say too much more about that because Barry will talk about that later on. If you want to find out more about Barry, he's kindly put a link in the chat with his bio. So feel free to access that. And just a bit of housekeeping before we start. There is a Q&A session at the end of tonight's webinar, so feel free to fire off any questions you have for Barry, or you may want to use the chat and just shoot off questions during the webinar. Barry may choose, however, to hold off and answer them at the end. If you have to leave for whatever reason, if you have to leave early, then you can catch whatever part of the webinar you've missed with the recording, which we'll place on the Osteopathy Australia website, hopefully within 10 days or so from tonight. And also just towards the end or at the end of tonight's webinar, there will be just a short survey. If I can ask you just to all stay online and just fill that out, just four short questions regarding the webinar, that would be fantastic. Anyhow, I'll hand it straight over to Barry, and all the best, and thank you all for joining tonight.
Thank you for the kind introduction, Dominic. Okay, so I'm going to get started. So you might see my eye darting to the side looking at the webinar chat, but feel free to just jump in. I'm keeping it very casual. If you have any questions or even flighting thoughts about what I'm talking about or where you want to guide my conversation here. So today's webinar is one of a lot of noise, as you all probably know, in the public around AI, but specifically we'll be talking about AI tools for clinical administration in allied health. So in terms of the agenda and learning objectives from this webinar, you'd probably take what you want from it. There'll also be a Q&A at the end, and I'm more than happy for you to all reach out to me afterwards if you have any questions or anything like that. But firstly, I'm going to just make a brief introduction about myself, briefly talk about, from a non-technical perspective, the fundamentals of AI in the context of healthcare, and then provide some case studies around how AI is being applied at the moment in clinical administration. And then we'll talk about integrating AI in your clinical practice from a practical point of view, from identifying AI integration strategies to adopting AI effectively and safely. And then we'll talk a little bit on the future of AI in healthcare to help you prepare your practice and businesses moving forward. And then I'll provide a very short overview of CliniScribe. And then there's a Q&A. So just an introduction about myself. So I'm a physio. I've worked with many osteopaths before over the last 19 years, and fantastic profession, very hands-on. And I love that you're keeping up the hands-on. I think physios, there's a sentiment that we're getting trained out of uni without that hands-on component, which is giving you a bit of an edge there. But I'm still a physio myself, practicing in a practice owner in St Kilda. But during COVID, I transitioned to software engineering because I'm based in Melbourne, and there was an extended lockdown, which stopped me from practicing hands-on therapies. And I did a 5-month full-time boot camp that guaranteed a software engineering job during that period. The reason why I went down that path was, one, I was a digital health advisor at the APA, so my own physio peak body, and ESSA before that. So I was always interested in how technology can enable better practice. And I'm currently the digital health advisor at the Australian Digital Health Agency for the federal government. So I have a very good idea around what's happening in the landscape from an infrastructure, public and private perspective. So I'm also an academic educator. So I teach other health professionals at postgraduate level in the area of digital health, change management, and strategy. Yeah, thanks for all the comments already in the chat. Hi, Kevin. Thanks for signing in. Yeah, so just keep that chat going. As I said, you might see my eye darting there to answer or guide my delivery. Also, popular tech advisor for many GP specialists and allied health clinics throughout Australia and some parts of the world, as well as health tech startups. I'm also a founder of an email marketing content company for GP clinics. We serve over 350,000 patients in Australia. And more recently, I got involved in an AI startup myself, and I hacked together a solution that solved my own problem in my clinic, which I'll talk about later. And I'm very passionate about democratizing AI in healthcare. You might have heard that buzzword before, democratizing, but I just want to share and celebrate the benefits of using AI tools in your clinic, as well as alert you around the risks as well. Some of those logos there, companies I've consulted for, as well as hospitals. So just a brief history about AI. So AI is actually not new. It started off as, if you look at the context of the history, it started off as in text and analytics. So just analyzing certain words and how many words there are in a paragraph, for example, in the early 50s, and then became rule-based systems, which are the essence of what you call algorithms now. So what programmers do around, if else statements and what happens in this condition and that condition. So you can imagine what I'm saying there, very basic logical steps. And that's used to solve, obviously, real-world problems in the world. And then in the 80s, we had something called natural language processing, which can read text, human text, and actually understand it in some form, at some level. Then in the 2000s, things got a bit more exciting, where we started using probability and statistical models to predict outcomes, which is training real-world data to these algorithms, which essentially it's essentially data-driven decision-making. That's another word for machine learning. So it takes the probability of things in the data you feed it, and then it makes decisions based on that. What you need to understand here is that these decisions are not probabilistic, so you always get the same solution. Therefore, they're deterministic. Does that all make sense, guys? Very basically, probabilistic solutions are like ChatGPT, where every time you ask it the same question, it will give you a different output. Machine learning is where you always get the same answer in a deterministic factor. And then you have GPT, which is more of that probabilistic area of technology. Biggest example at the moment is ChatGPT. So how many of you guys just in that chat have used something like ChatGPT to help either in your own personal lives or clinic or practice? Feel free to add comments there. So briefly, just to explain, artificial intelligence itself, the term is the umbrella term for all of this stuff here. Essentially, the definition of that is its ability to, of a machine, like a computer, and that could be software and hardware, to imitate human intelligence in some form. And then just under that, in a concentric circle, you have algorithms which incorporate intelligence into machine by automatically learning from data. So as I said there, that's based on probabilistic models, which you might have learned in high school and things like that around probabilities of things happening. This is just trained on a large volume and quality of data. And then a bit more advanced than that, you have deep learning, which are algorithms which mimic the human brain to incorporate intelligence into machine. So we're talking about here about an architecture that mimics the neural networks of a human brain, which you probably all have learned in some form in neuroscience, at least the principles there. And that's what we're at the moment. Okay, so I'm going to talk about AI in healthcare, just from a one-on-one perspective about what it's already been applied to successfully in healthcare. Yeah, thanks, Alona. Glad you used ChatGPT in certain areas. So I just split this up into 3 columns and just some explanations. So in terms of AI, it's already being used to perform tasks requiring human intelligence, like diagnosing diseases from medical images, which it can do very, very well, frankly. And it may displace certain roles in that profession. So what you need to understand here is that some tasks AI do better than humans, more accurately, faster, and cheaper. And secondly, some tasks AI can't do as well as humans as well. So it's important to understand the distinction that AI is unlikely in the next 10, 15 years to take over roles, but it can definitely replace certain tasks we do in a role, if that makes sense. Machine learning, as I said, is data-driven decision-making or making predictions. That's already being done in many hospitals now, even in Victoria, where I live, where I'm predicting patient readmissions based on historical data. And then you have deep learning, which I said applies to neuroscience principles, analyzing complex patterns. And they're already using that to detect tumors using MRI scans. There's actually a startup called Harrison AI in Australia that's already doing that and making massive pioneering leaps in that area. And then we earlier talked about natural language processing, which is more in terms of the AI being able to interpret, understand, and generate human language. And that can also be used to identify anomalies as well in should be X-ray reports. So that sort of builds up from where we are at now with large language models. Computer vision is also related to analyzing MRI scans, etc. And that enables machines to understand and interpret visual images and videos. We're already seeing that being used, as I said earlier, in radiography interpretations. It's also used in musculoskeletal health, which you guys all know about, around interpreting biomechanics, helping clinicians analyze that more accurately, and also monitoring remotely what happens there. And then lastly, we have generative AI or large language models, which a great example of that is ChatGPT. So this basically predicts the next word. So if you say roses are red, it's more likely to say violets are blue, etc. And that's the current level of technology, which is a different realm trained on trillions of data points from a GPT-4 model, which is the most advanced model from OpenAI, which runs ChatGPT if you pay for that. And this can create new content, text, images, and even music based on learned data. So this is already being used, like in my startup, around generating personalized patient treatment plans and reports and transcription as well. So examples of AI tools for clinical administration I know of that people use already is ChatGPT. So you've got the free version, which you do not want to add patient data in there. Please don't. But you can use it to help with your marketing, communication, and other things. Secondly, we have Google Bard, which is the Google version, which isn't as performant for these things. You've got Claude from Anthropic, which writes human language very well, but it's not so good with STEM or scientific-based logical reasoning. And then you got GPT-4.0, which is the paid version of ChatGPT. That's a multimodal device which can take in images, process audio on the fly, as well as produce text and images. So you can sort of see where that's going there in the not so distant future. I think GPT-4 is a very useful general tool that we can all use, should all try as a starting point with ChatGPT and see what it can do for you to save you time. And for general administration, you have Microsoft Copilot, which is available now, that is part of the Microsoft Office suite, which can help you write letters and do things like that too, and even grammar check. And so anything language-based, it's kind of like a new version of a calculator. And then you've got Otter AI, which I find a lot of allied health professionals use for transcription of meeting notes and things like that. Have a look into that. And then in clinical administration, we've got CliniScribe, my startup. We've got Patient Notes, which you guys might have heard of, Libird Health, and Heidi Health. These tools, apart from CliniScribe, record the whole consult and then provide that dictation and transcribe it into SOAP notes and reports. I'm not a big believer for what I do, where I started with the whole recording the consult due to reliability issues for a long period. They don't tend to do it that well at the moment. They can cause error. So in CliniScribe, we use a more of a dictation post-consult feature. Okay, so love to hear your input at the moment. So what challenges do you face daily that sort of have brought you to potentially an AI being a solution? Which administrative tasks consume most of your time? Feel free to use the audio or turn on the speaker for those that are brave enough. And also, do you have any issues with patient documentation and record keeping? How could AI potentially improve patient care and operational efficiency? And what other problems could AI potentially help solve in your practice as problems? Does anyone want to reach out and make a comment? Anyone currently using it, like Ilona? Jerome?
Hi, Barry. Can you
Yeah.
hear me?
Yes, I can.
By the way, thank you for this so far. I'm learning a lot.
Right.
So I actually coincidentally started using Heidi only today, in fact.
Oh, fantastic.
And so far, so good. You're right about the accuracy. There are some, it does make errors. It gets things in the wrong places. But it's already saving me a considerable amount of time. I would say, though, in response to your question, it would probably be the professional correspondence in terms of referrals, letters, trying to keep the whole sort of team up to date, particularly with those more complex cases that require slightly more attention to detail. That's previously where I think my time has been a little drained.
Yes.
So I think that's another reason why Heidi has worked, I think, quite well so far, just because it's able to synthesize and process a large amount of information for those more complex cases.
Fantastic. So that's great, Jerome. So I definitely think AI can already reduce cognitive load so you can think about other things that are of higher value. Yeah, even if it's not 100% accurate, if it saves you time, then fantastic. So yeah, thanks for that comment. Do you have any other thoughts about using it, Jerome? What other things you could potentially
think? I think the limitation actually is speed. The processing time is not it's not quite as fast as we would like at this stage in my experience so far.
Cool.
Yeah, accuracy is the main other issue, I would say. And of course, I think it's just prudent generally to check before you enter it into your practice management system or wherever you put your notes due to those inaccuracies.
Yep. So big tip there, don't become over-reliant on AI from Jerome. Wisdom. I find the risk of it is practitioners might get a bit complacent and lazy and submit things that may put yourself at medico-legal risk. Am I making sense there, guys?
Definitely.
So you got to be extra careful. And it'll be on you, not on Heidi, right? So just be really, really careful about what you do there. Because it can make up a lot of crap too, unfortunately, which I'll talk about a bit later. It's called an AI hallucination. Particularly when you're talking around generative content. Remember how I said earlier that it's about probabilities of what should be next? Sometimes it gets that wrong. Is that clear what I'm saying, Jerome, everyone?
Yeah.
That's all. So hopefully early on, I gave you a good overview, right, of what this all means. And you can probably maybe even infer some of the limitations of these AI technologies already and where it's going. Yep. Does anyone else want to comment? Yep. So Julie would like, I wanted to write my patient notes. Yeah, that's absolutely possible now. from a dictation and a full consult recording perspective. But I absolutely agree with Jerome. That the reason why I built CliniScribe without that whole recording thing was I can keep the costs down on that. It's quicker for you to dictate something for 3 minutes. You don't have to ask patient consent as well, because you're not recording anything. You're just providing it for your own notes. And lastly, because it's a dictation function, it doesn't make up shit. It's less likely. Yep. Anyone else want to add to that? Yep. So Alona, I haven't used AI in my work yet. I agree. Referral letters and corresponding with doctors can be overwhelming. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I absolutely, I'm a physio, you're an osteo, we have the same issues. Often the letter we write to the GP or the referrer is our marketing piece, isn't it? Like developing that credibility, having that frequent communication. So I know there's some clinicians that really a bit gung-ho about that, but given that I run a private practice and I'd like to grow it, I think the letter component is really important and can be challenging to me and overwhelming as well, particularly in between patients. You sort of want to make your best efforts to that, because that's the way you communicate to other stakeholders involved in patient care. Anyone disagree with me on that? Anyone hand up on that? Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So it's really trying to understand basically, yeah, what these technologies do and what risks you have, and weigh up the pros and cons, and making sure that the benefits outweigh the risks, like what Jerome just said there, fellow osteopath, that it can make up crap, but if it saves you time, you just got to make that compromise and really double check and proofread what it produces. Cool. So it looks like the main challenge here is around documentation, report writing, and there's already use of it for osteopaths and physios. So yeah, look out for that. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So to integrating AI into your practice. So as I said earlier, I'm at RMI teaching change management. So I take a very kind of rigorous approach to assessing whether you need something like this or not. I'm not here to sell my practice tool. If you want to use it, you want to try it, you can. But I'm here to help you understand and go away from this thinking, okay, I have a better idea of this. At least I have certain steps or points I can take from this when I'm considering such tools. So in terms of integrating AI into clinical practice, the first absolute step is to understand the problem. So what I mean by that, before speaking to a vendor or someone who's trying to sell you or flog you off an AI tool, clearly define your problems and break down the problems into small parts. Gather qualitative and quantitative data and insights, and avoid jumping to solutions prematurely. So what I mean by this, talk to your staff about it. What are your receptionists having issues with? What are your junior staff having issues with? What are your senior staff? In fact, all the pain points there potentially are similar but different, they're nuanced, if that makes sense what I'm saying there. And it's really important that the first step, which is probably 80% of what you need to do here, is to verify if it's really actually a problem in your practice and whether you can actually manage it in some kind of manual way without using fancy tools. And then step 2, you measure the impact. As I said, so how much of a problem is this? Like, do I really need to subscribe to these tools? Is it truly a problem? Is it a real game changer in some cases? Is it not? So gather this feedback from your staff. Don't do it. Don't implement something without being able to measure, as at a reference point and afterwards, like what you do as osteopaths when you're a good clinician, right? So it's important to take that type of clinical approach, systematic approach to this. And then quantitative measures. Get the timer out. See what actually receptionists and osteopaths actually do. How long do they actually take to write these letters? Don't ask them about that, but actually literally time them. Am I making sense on that point? So just making sure you get the real data that's accurate around this. They might say oh, no, it only takes me 2 minutes, Barry. It only takes me 2 minutes, Jerome. But is that truly the case? And then you need to think about it in terms of context switching, like, are they being distracted and preoccupied in between as a result, affecting the quality of care, as we earlier talked about around cognitive load. And then step 3, you map out the tasks and workflows. So mapping out your clinical, operations in visual form. You understand it better than anyone else. You are the expert of your own business. So, or even practice if you don't run a business. So what steps do you take? What do you do first? Do you take an intake form? Is that pre-consult? Is there a text reminder at the start? What do you do to follow up a patient? When do you fill in the form? When does the reception take the form? Is it a piece of paper that needs to be entered in something like Clinico, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Understand how everything is interconnected. Any questions about that? So then after you map it out, you summarize and contextualize the problem. So see if you can actually come out with, in your own words, a one-page brief on the problem. Describe the problems, the impact. So as I said, the impact is qualitative and quantitative, and the context of the situation. It's really important, that aspect of when someone's, like a snake oil salesman tries to sell you something at all costs, they don't. And the bit often that's missing is the context. So making sure you're very clearly defined in that before you go out and speaking to someone is really important. And then you reach out to AI solution providers lastly. And then, you talk to them to see if they match your needs and evaluate the solutions based on your specific requirements and impact. And what I mean by that is around, the risks associated with and if they don't offer a free trial, force a free trial. It's important for you to actually trial these things first with no obligation before actually committing to something like this, because you need to find out what the limitations of your practice is. And I think at least a 2-week period with your staff is usually adequate for a smaller practice. And then step 6, pilot and measure the impact. So what I mean by here is take it like a scientific study. So like a randomized control trial, implement the AI solution in control pilot phase, meaning time your staff before and after the effect, like a blinded study. So do something along those lines to get a bit more of an accurate indicator of whether this is effective and produces the ROI it's sold on the landing page to you about, and then see if it actually saves you money or time or whatever the intent is originally you've set out for. Don't get sold by other things, other benefits as a result of that. Come back to where your problem lies to begin with and whether it solves that. And then, as I said, predefine. So monitor these predefined qualitative and quantitative measures and then gather feedback from your staff to see if they like it. Because ultimately we're in the people business and we need to make sure we have happier staff, happier teams, happier patients. And, it's your clinicians, your osteopaths that really matter for your business, and you'll make sure they're happy, stress-free, and, reduce all the cognitive load possibly so they can spend time taking high quality, providing high quality value and care to the patients and your communities. So here's my checklist I came up with for AI adoption for osteopaths and just allied health in general. So first thing is data privacy. Does it meet Australian data privacy and security standards? So if it doesn't, and you're looking at a solution in the US, which might suit your needs, probably best not to use it, because in Australia, we have laws against having healthcare data overseas. And that doesn't build your trust for your patients as a result of that. So it's important to really ask the right questions. There's a lot of guides on this around data privacy and security standards of the app or tool that you're looking into. You need to be able to ask them, how was it trained? So does it use ChatGPT data? Does it have its own data set? What is this AI trained or fine-tuned on is really important for you to understand. And another question there is whether you can actually train it with your own data and make it more accurate and more personalized to your own needs at your clinic. And then on top of that, are they going to use this data for other clinics? Some people don't want that in private enterprise. And how reliable? So we talked about that before, right? In terms of reliability, how accurate is the outputs? It's never 100% in most cases, but can you deal with it? Can you make this compromise? Is the return on investment on time and effort there for that? And does it integrate with practice management software like Nuclear, Clinico, or whatever else you use? That's a really important part of the workflow to enhance the user experience for the clinician and admin support staff, for example. And as I said earlier, is there actually a free trial? Does it truly produce an ROI? And are there safeguards against clinical safety and over-reliance? So is there a draft feature automatically? Does it warn you before your clinicians might get lazy and start submitting stuff that might be a hallucination? And then transparency. Can the AI decision-making be explained? Which is also important. So your provider needs to be able to confidently answer these questions, I feel. And emerging research in terms of, is there research backing this tool? Are there case studies out there of showing success in the world? It might not be your profession, but might something else where you can extrapolate the findings from. And then as we talked about AI hallucinations, so sometimes it just makes up complete crap. How does this system for healthcare manage that? What safeguards are in place? Comes back to the ethical use question. Does anyone have any questions or want to yell out here in that aspect that anything's unclear there? Anyone? No? Cool. Feel free to just add to the chat. So in terms of future of AI, where I see things based on the fact that I'm a software and AI engineer and I work on these things, from a healthcare perspective, I think it's also important to know where this is all heading so you can make clearer investment decisions and things that will help you improve your own practice and teams and businesses. So it's important to understand the distinction between a co-pilot versus an autopilot. So co-pilots are generally what's available now, like Heidi Health is an example, where they assist with tasks, but they still need human oversight. The second category to this is autopilots. This is where you have AI agents that handle tasks end to end, making independent decisions. Yes, it might sound a bit scary, but you can see the potential return on investment on this on very menial, boring, repetitive tasks, which might not be desirable for humans to do. And it might be done more accurately, faster, and cheaper by the AI system. So it is definitely a consideration. I do believe the future is a mixture of both, depending on the task. So I feel there's this concept around the digital employee in clinical admin. So it will reduce your need or costs on admin support and staff. Often people use outsourced workers as well, I find in reality. That's probably a dying kind of need there as these systems more advance. So these systems plan and execute tasks independently based on training. So they're kind of like your intern that you train up to be independent. They make data-driven decisions, as we talked about earlier. Hopefully you learned machine learning. And these collaborate with humans. So we'll be working in teams with digital employees, which is kind of like this AI co-pilot, autopilot concept there already we're seeing in the world right now. So the impact on clinical in clinical administration. So I think it's a very positive future for all of us as health professionals. Many of us are struggling as well in allied health because we don't have the advocacy or funding, etc., or the clout in that way compared to the medical professions. But this is great for us. It's going to increase productivity and efficiency. It's going to create new roles in your clinic, even for overseeing AI. It might be, the younger Gen Z that might oversee that as your lead to help you out with some of these things. Might even be an older one who's a tech geek, who knows. It's going to reduce errors and streamline processes. It's also going to improve patient and clinical outcomes ultimately. I strongly believe that with the reduction in clinical cognitive load on tasks that require administrative burden that often cause burnout, as Ilona suggested earlier, around overwhelming nature of report writing, etc. So I see light at the end of the tunnel for this type of tool and technology. So preparing us as osteopaths and physios for AI in clinical admin to stay up to date with industry trends. Embrace a growth mindset. So continue to learn in this area. Don't be scared about it. I think at least most people are in it for the right reasons. So it's important to partner up with companies where you feel they have good intent and ethics. And moving forward, I think it's important to invest in your own human-centric skills, improve that aspect, and you're not going to be replaced at all by a bot. Okay, it's not going to happen. osteopaths and physios are probably one of the least likely in this AI revolution to be replaced anytime soon. You can quote me on that and record that one too. So, and then just try your best to keep up with, you know, some of the industry specific AI applications that are coming out, and there's going to be more and more over time. So just a quick overview of CliniScribe. So it's an AI co-pilot for allied health clinicians, automating written tasks, document management. So we can actually process e-faxes and things like that, even if it's blurry, and then help update your patient record, create new one and existing ones. We also do SOAP note dictation. As I said, we don't record the full consult like Tidy Health. Nothing wrong with that at all, but it just didn't work in my practice originally. It's a bit too slow, as Jerome suggested earlier. We do report generation, document processing, and we're entering this world of clinical mentor assistant, where you can add your knowledge base to help some of the juniors get up to scratch with your induction and some of the clinical feedback it can provide you and help you become a better mentor to your other staff too. So we're at the moment a co-pilot, we're not an autopilot, by the way, but that'll be the goal in the longer term. So this is, you guys can sort of have a look at that demo in your own time. So what I'll do is I'll just, you can screenshot that, that link, but that's basically what it looks like in a nutshell of what it can be done. It's just a 10-minute demo. You can watch that in your own time. I'm not going to talk about that here. It just gives you an idea. At the very least, if you don't even use it, we're also in beta phase at the moment, so we're not charging anyone for anything. We just want feedback to make it the best. We've got a lot of osteopaths on it at the moment. We've got over 200 allied health clinicians on the platform giving us invaluable feedback. My focus is on allied health, unlike Heidi, for example. So I'm invested in the future of allied health there. Okay, so this quote, I think, is quite inspirational and a bit of wisdom here. Don't be scared of AI. Try your best to adopt that growth mindset and embrace it in some form or not. You don't have to be a coder like me or build any tools. Just try to make use of the tools that's going to make your life easier. So Jensen Huang is so this company is called Endivia, and they actually power the training hardware behind all the latest AI systems like ChatGPT at the moment. In fact, I think last week they become a more valuable company than Apple. So you can say this is not a fad. I think it's a $3 trillion company out of nowhere from Silicon Valley. So it's probably good for us to at least have an understanding of what's going on there in the world. And he suggests that you will not lose your job to AI. You will lose your job to human being using AI. So it's great that you're attending this to learn and be open-minded to it. You will not lose your company because of AI, but you'll lose your company to a company that uses AI. I think that's a really great summary of what it's like to be a health professional too, in this AI era. So does anyone have any questions? So I'm finished with my presentation. Anyone? Feel free to, yeah, so these are my contact details. So I also do consulting for allied health clinics. I'd love just to talk to people around their problems and working out what I can do to help health professionals. Does anyone have any questions so far about the presentation? Was it useful? Was it not useful? Any? Jerome, hand up. Anyone? Does anyone want to say anything?
Hello again, Barry.
Yes.
Hi. Sorry about that. I didn't realize I was muted. Just a quick question about the how you develop the language models or where you get your data from. I understand that Heidi is mostly medical, as I think you've already mentioned, which makes its grip on medical terminology very, very good. And so my question is, what's feeding the CliniScribe AI? Is that just allied health, or do you get that from elsewhere?
Great question. So we use a mixture of models. So we actually tested it. So it's based on prompt engineering and sample data that we submit to it. So to write a report, for example, on ChatGPT, you might write 2 sentences, right? Write a report for me for this XYZ, right? Our prompts have been specifically tested for allied health. And our prompt page, just between all of us here, it's literally like 2 pages of prompt for a report to come out accurately. Does that answer your question?
Right. Yeah.
So we don't train it because I don't feel that's the way to go moving forward, because these models are actually getting better. But the prompt aspect is really important. And secondly, we allow you to submit your own sample reports, and then it can learn from it and create prompts from it. The AI can do that. And you can also customize your prompts as well to your liking.
Yeah. Yeah.
That answer the question? Yeah.
That's what I've just started to do is play with the custom templates in Heidi.
Yep.
It is a bit of a learning curve, admittedly. I'm not that tech savvy. I'm sure there will be plenty of people out there who find it easier than I do. But it's totally doable, I think. And I've already got it working better than I had it originally. So
That's great. Yep.
Yeah, I think just to reiterate what you've already said, Barry, the future looks really good for this space.
Yes.
And I'm certainly quite excited about the integration of AI into practice, because it saves a lot of time.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for that. Hopefully you sound like you're pretty confident in tech, Jerome. Hopefully you learned something.
Yeah, no, I really have.
Yep.
The other thing that I wanted to share just quickly was around inaccuracies and reduction of errors. And that's something that I think perhaps as health professionals, we're not always too confident in admitting. But I actually decided to conduct a little study whereby I did a mock interview with my wife, created a note for it, and then compared it against the AI note. And I was pretty surprised how many omissions there were in my own note. So just sort of to underline the fact that clinical errors and inaccuracies are something to be concerned about, or at least in this case, they were for me. So I think that's another area where I think that this is a big step forwards.
Yeah, very interesting. So I think over time, I'm sort of optimistic about that. I think things will become more accurate, and there'll be less error. But it's also important, just as a note, that I think as an osteopathy profession, to try your best to contribute to it so you don't get left behind in that. That's what I'm saying. Like actually help develop or provide the knowledge base or the domain expertise to make sure it works in the way you want it to. I'd highly encourage everyone to get involved. Otherwise, the solutions will be not ideal for osteopaths. So it's important that you get involved in any form.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Sorry? Yeah. Am I making sense? Yeah. Just get it like Jerome. Fantastic, inspiring example. Just get involved in some form and provide feedback to these providers before you just don't want to get left behind during this era. And you don't have to be a developer like myself, but you just need to make sure you keep track of it and be an advocate and someone who provides feedback to these products and systems to train it in a way that will be more beneficial to your profession. Hopefully I said that clearly. Any thoughts on that? Anyone else? Even if you know nothing about tech.
Yeah, Barry, it's Dominic.
Yes.
Fantastic overview and insight to AI. Julie's posted a question in the Q&A. I'm not sure if you can see it. She's asking, does
yep.
Yep.
Yes, I do see it. Fantastic.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Yes, does CliniScribe integrate with Clinico? Yes, it does. How does CliniScribe make patient notes different? Okay. So, Julie, you're there? You can turn on your audio if you want to. We can have a chat. So,
Here I am.
hi, Julie.
Thanks.
Hope you're enjoying the presentation so far.
I am. Thank you very much. I don't want to be left behind, like you just said.
Hopefully my physio mates won't kill me. No, just joking. I want the whole allied health profession to be uplifted in this rather than being left behind. Anyway, so so CliniScribe does integrate with Clinico. Secondly, Julie, how does it differ? So dictating means it basically provides the hard script of what you say in a microphone to a piece of paper or document, right?
Yes.
So in that order too. So if you start off with the objective assessment and then you ended up with the history at the end and the tests at the start for whatever reason, like in a confused, jumbled format, it will be like that. Does it make sense? So what this AI does is it actually reorders the thoughts into a SOAP, subjective, objective. I don't know what you guys use, but it's probably similar to physio. Subjective, objective assessment, analysis, plan format. It reorders it for you and rewrites it for you. Does that answer your question there?
It does. I don't think I knew what SOAP was.
I don't know.
So let's say patient presents with left-sided lower back pain with radiation down their leg to foot. Can AI just write, patient's got sciatica and this is what I usually do, so this is what I did to them, or
yep, you can. You can actually tell the AI that too.
Okay, so I can train it. I can train CliniScribe to think how I think anyway, and write down what I would have done anyway without me having to tell it each time that's what I did do.
Yes, correct. In a prompt. As I said, some of these prompts can be 2 pages long. Does it make sense? So you can provide it with sample inputs.
So do you mean I train it in the prompts of the 2 pages and then I've trained it once and then I'm
you're done.
right to go?
You just consistently do it. Yep. With no
okay. All right.
Making sense. And you can say, don't make up crap. Do you know what I'm saying, Julie? Just use my dictation literally and produce from that. Don't make up anything.
That's good to know.
Am I making sense? It's just the way you prompt it, right? So yeah. And you find that, and then you might forget, that there's pins and needles in the feet, right? At the end.
Yeah.
Add it into the end and it will actually order it properly for you in the note as well. Or whatever it is. So you can jumble it rather than having to stay in the form, which it's not a natural way of doing it, right? In a human conversation. So it can sort that out for you too.
And so skipping further ahead, I sometimes am employed for medico-legal reports as an expert for my opinion. Am I going to come across, will I know that someone has AI generated notes?
All right.
Is this something that we need to disclose legally?
Okay. So this is a very smart question. This is all right. So this is my theory, okay, Julie. This is not fact. I reckon there'll be a precedent set by someone using AI notes and something gone completely wrong, where APRA will have to change the rules on that.
I think you're right.
You think I'm right?
I think you're right. It's going to go. Something's going to go wrong.
Something is going to go wrong.
Create precedents.
Yeah. And I'm a naturally anxious person on this. That's why I did the dictation and didn't record the whole consult, just in case my company was branded right in one of these app notifications. There's a lot of issues with it, in particular around changing the nature of the consult. The patient knowing that something's being recorded, maybe they're not giving the right information. Secondly, it's making up shit that looks right, that you just submit. And then if things do go wrong, maybe like someone like yourself, Julie, will be involved in that decision-making, that you need to write that this was written by AI at the bottom.
Yeah. I've thought about it around in terms of consent as well. It would be pretty easy for AI to generate patient gave consent for every single thing I said today,
I
whereas
know.
maybe you never actually
You
truly
need
gained
to ask consent.
Yeah.
So I've been involved in some of that type of stuff, and I'm not comfortable with some of these concepts, right, Julie? Like to practice it willy-nilly, because you can actually get in big trouble, and it's kind of an unregulated area until something does go terribly wrong, even in Australia or somewhere else. And I think the biggest problem I have is the consent part. You're not really telling the patient the real truth. Are you going to sit there for 10 minutes to speak about consent to your patient? Doesn't make sense before you start. They're going to say yes because they trust you, because you're in a position of power. But do they truly know what's happening to that? Sending all that audio to somewhere else to process. Doesn't make sense. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but it adds another element to the whole mix of risk medically.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Again, we have to not be left behind, don't we?
No. We need it.
Right. We need to be
looks like the left
part
behind
of the decision making on this stuff.
We need to be a big part of this. And
yeah,
I don't know what to do there, but if anyone's got some kind of coalition or anything, I'm happy to be involved in, because I don't think it's a nice thing, and it can actually cause serious harm. The magnitude of benefit to is massive, as you can see, right, from what we talked about, but also the magnitude of risk and damage, it could be just as high. Luckily, we're in the more physical professions where there's less things like that going on. But I can imagine, anyway. Any thoughts on that, Julie?
Well, no, thank you very much for your answers and the discussion. That's great.
I didn't answer it properly, but it's a great foresight on that. And I said there's no laws against people using this either, right, at the moment. Yeah. So there's another question from Kevin. Can you foresee AI leading to an automation of medical diagnostic to extent that it will replace the need for patients to face? Okay, if that is the intention of the patient. Okay, so this is an interesting conversation around diagnostics. There's studies that have shown that on occasion, the AI has more empathy than a GP, for example, the chatbot, which is kind of concerning, only because of our system, because there's not enough time to gain rapport in a 5-10 minute consult bulk build, right? Versus changing a bot for an hour. Obviously, the other one's going to be more empathetic if you want to report, subjectively. And that can impact patient outcome. Secondly, these current AI models do pass medical exams in very high marks, meaning it can probably diagnose certain things more accurately than humans. And I wouldn't be surprised already in your osteopathic clinics or even GPs that people are using ChatGPT to check up things as well. So yeah, I think there's this concern around, from the consumer perspective, that GPs may be competing in some ways with previously Dr. Google, but now AI models like ChatGPT. And you can say that they're not that accurate and hallucinate now, but people still use them. I can tell you that. My wife uses it, everyone uses it. So, and the question there again, like back to what Julie was saying, is how they're going to regulate this, I'm not sure. And if it starts to get better than a GP and they start trusting that more than a GP, then there'll be a question around the role of a GP in society. It's kind of like the idea around self-driving car. If it has less crashes and reduces insurance claims and kills less people, then why are humans driving on the road? Am I making sense? A philosophical question there. Kevin, any thoughts on my response there in a nutshell? But yeah, I definitely have thought about this, and I think the nature of healthcare will change, and we need to be on it now before it can go haywire too. Hope that answers your question, Kevin. Any other questions there? Anyone else? Hopefully I didn't miss anyone there. But yeah, anyway, so lastly, final notes, I highly commend you all for listening to this to the end. I know it sounds a bit techy and sometimes people are intimidated by it, but I'd just like to, share with you as a fellow allied health professional in the tech industry that this is an unavoidable evolution of technology, like the .com boom. And we all need to take the lead as professions in allied health particular, where we don't have that full power to make an influence over what these tools may look like in the future to benefit ultimately our patients and the way we practice. Does anyone have any further thoughts to what I said there, or disagree with it, or neutral, or agree? Anyone? That's really all I had to say, and hopefully I didn't bore you with the information I provided, and you all have become more confident from this webinar to at least be inspired or to learn more about AI and try to understand a bit better and how it may impact your practice now and into the future. Thanks, everyone. No more last questions? My pleasure, Elena. Yeah, but feel free to reach out to me on my LinkedIn or shoot me an email. I didn't put it here because it might be on YouTube. So yeah, feel free to connect out with me, and hopefully I might do a follow-up webinar if everyone's interested in using some of these tools like ChatGPT for your practice, if it is popular with the right feedback on it. Yeah, that's it. That's if you're enjoying how I've presented things and whether you want more of this type of content fed through the CPD system. Thanks, guys.